Welcome to William Street Gym and Boxer North. My name's Sai and this is Sylvia. This is the first one of a video series we're going to send to you to help you get on top of some of the basics that you need to know to develop through your boxing training. There's lots of different videos and information out there on the web, and different people will tell you different things, and things can be done differently in boxing. There's no one set style, but this is just the way that we tend to teach stuff here at William Street Gym and Boxer North. That will help you just develop and build on the skills as we show you. So some of the things are a little bit more dependent on your body and how you move, but there's key principles that we need you to understand and help apply to your technique. Now, the first one of those is your stance. Your stance forms the foundation for all your offense, defense, and your movement. So it's something that we've got to get pretty right pretty early on in the piece. Now, I'm going to show you a few basic things to remember. Remember, you can tailor some of these things to your individual needs. So I'm going to use Syl for all the demonstrations. So yeah, I'm the talking one, she's the doing one today. Now, two important things about your boxing stance is to be stable and mobile. So they're two opposing concepts, but they're two that are really important. So we can have a very big, wide stance with very bent legs, which will give you a lot of stability. But then when it comes to mobility, it will hinder that. Alternatively, you can have a very narrow, high stance with sort of fairly straight legs. That'll allow you to move around a lot more and be on your tippy toes, but then it won't allow you to absorb the opponent's blows or generate power of your own. So we've got to find something that's halfway there. So what we like to start to do is to start standing with your feet just about wider than your hips apart. Now again, this can depend on your height, the width of your shoulders, how big you are, how big your stance gets. Obviously, the taller and bigger you are, the bigger your stance is going to end up being. So Syl isn't very wide. With that wide stance, it should provide you stability from side to side. So anytime one of us in class tells you to widen or narrow your stance, this is what we're referring to. So if I said to Sylvia, narrow up your stance, she'd bring her feet together more. If we said widen it up, she'd go further out. Okay, so that's the first thing. So again, we're going to be just outside of hip width. Now, from that point, we're going to take a step forward with your lead foot. So if you're a right-hander, your rear foot is your right foot, and your lead foot is your left one. So Sylvia's just going to take a step forward with her left foot, and now she has stability front and back. So if I ever say, or Syl ever says to you, or one of the instructors says to you, shorten or lengthen your stance, by saying shorten your stance, we mean bring them closer together this way, and longer is that way. So short and long, narrow and wide. Okay, so this stance now gives you stability side to side and front and back. So you're able to generate power. If you get hit, you don't fall backwards, you're stable, and you should be able to move. Now again, depending on how tall you are and other personal preferences, these can be a little bit wider or narrower, but the general principle is going to be the same. Now, with your boxing stance, that can be different to some stance, like a Muay Thai stance. We like to get your stance a little bit side on. The way we achieve that is exactly like that. Sylvia's going to turn her lead foot in a little bit. You don't want to turn it in too far because then that's going to inhibit movement, but just about that much turned in, which also causes her knee to turn in, her hip turns in, and her shoulder comes in as well. So now Sylvia's left shoulder, her lead shoulder, is pointing at about 11 o'clock. If you were staying on a clock, 12 o'clock is where you guys are, 11 o'clock out here. From a side-on view, her shoulder is now closer to the camera than her chin is. Her dominant side, her preferred side, which is her right side, is now back. So it's loaded up. Okay? The weight is distributed 50-50 and knees are bent. So think about shock absorption. Your knees are bent so you can absorb the power, but also force generation. You can push yourself forward and back and generate power. So if the knees are locked out, your legs have lost their potential to generate power. If they're slightly bent, they're ready to go. Now, like we discussed, the foot placement is going to be a little bit dependent on your own personal preferences as long as you're keeping those core principles the same. One thing that does tend to change is as we get closer in against an opponent, we do tend to widen up our stance just to get a little bit extra stability from side to side. Okay? Now, the final part of the equation is your guard. So your hands have to be in a position that allow you to defend and also punch without having to reset your hands. So basically, you want to keep your hands in a position that you can fire at any time. As you can see here, Sylvia's got her rear hand, her right hand, just tucked in by her cheekbone and her elbows in. Okay, so we don't want the elbows winged out, we want them in, protecting the ribs and allowing for any straight punches from the backhand to come straight down the line. The lead hand is the same height and slightly out. Again, at range, this is a great position for it to be in. As you get closer to your opponent, you can bring your left hand back closer in to allow for the fact that you're probably going to get a lot more hooks and close-in punches there. The basic stance, play around with it, get comfortable with it. Before anything else, we want to make sure this is right. This is the foundation to get you moving, stepping, and punching. Thanks, and we'll see you on the next episode.